Hi guys, welcome back. Lesson 24. We are going to talk about multiplication and division today. If you just watched lesson 23, it's the same idea, but with multiplication and division, so it shouldn't be too difficult to get. All right, so for those of you following along at home, Saxon Algebra 1, 3rd edition. We are talking, like I said, 24, so we're going to get right into some examples. Guys, in the last one of the multiplication, I want you to write this down in your notes, guys. Multiplication property of equality. It says we are allowed to multiply or divide an equation by any, so equality equation, I should probably spell that out, by any number as long as we do it to both sides. So we can so we can add or subtract on any number, right? As long as, or we can add or subtract any number to an equation as long as we do it on both sides. Same with multiplication and division. Multiplication and division. All right, guys, so I'm just going to launch right into these. Example number 1. So when we were talking about addition and subtraction, the inverse of addition is subtraction. The inverse of subtraction is addition. Guys, the inverse for multiplication, division. The inverse for division, multiplication. So the best way to solve equations is to do the opposite, the inverse operation, to isolate our variables. So for example number 1, 5x equals 20. Guys, when we're right here, we're multiplying. Sorry, that's my dog. Right here, we're multiplying. We don't put a dot or an X or anything like that in between here because we're mathematicians and we're lazy, right? I guess I could put parentheses, but why? We don't have to. So the opposite or the inverse of multiplication, as I said earlier, is division. So why do I want to do that? Because if I divide this by 5, these guys cancel out. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So x equals 4, because 20 divided by 5 is 4. That's all that there is to it on this, okay? So I can go into a little bit more detail, and in fact in Algebra 2 I think I will, where we talk about or actually in Geometry we'll talk about the equality property and why there's a property that says that we're allowed to multiply by reciprocals, and that's essentially what we're doing, but I think for this we'll keep it as simple as possible. So example 2. 2 over 5x equals 7. All right, so we're multiplying 2/5 times x. The opposite of multiply is divide. But if I do that, I get what's looking like a wonky little fraction here, right? It's actually called a complex fraction. And we don't divide fractions. If you recall back, we multiply by the reciprocal. We multiply by the reciprocal. And the reason why is now this cancels out with this cancels out with this. But guys, what you do on one side, you must do to the other. To make life easier, I'm going to make this over 1 so it looks like a lovely little fraction. Times, and the reciprocal was 5 halves. 5 halves. I can't cancel anything out. So now I have this x all by itself. I can't cancel anything out. So 7 times 5 is 35 over 2. 35 over 2. You can leave it as an improper fraction. That's totally fine. The answers might be as a whole number, or I'm sorry, as a mixed number. So if you're grading this or your parents are grading this, you may want to just double check with them to make sure that they know. All right, so for 3, we have 2 and 1/4 x equals 3. Well, first things first with mixed numbers, you won't see them much longer. Most everything is going to be in improper fraction form. So let's turn it into an improper fraction. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1 is 9. 9/4 x equals 3. 9/4 x equals 3. Again, we're multiplying here, and the inverse operation is division. However, we can't divide. We're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Again, if we do that, these cancel out, these cancel out. But what I do to one side, I got to do that over here. All right, now before I go multiplying straight across the top, straight across the bottom, I can cross cancel. Divide this by 3, I get 1. Divide this by 3, I get 3. Across the top, 1 times 4 is 4 on the bottom. 1 times 3 is 3. Your answer is x equals 4/3. Now guys, you can go in and plug these in and you should get the correct answer with this and the previous lesson. So again, 2/4, that was 9/4 x, and instead of x, I'm gonna put in 4/3. All of that should equal 3 if we've done this correctly. Sure enough, this cancels out with this and I get 9/3. This becomes 1, this becomes 3. 3 equals 3. Yes, we have done it correctly, and that's how you check your work. So there should be no excuses on making mistakes on your tests, right, for an equation, because you are able to check your own work. All right, so number 4, x divided by 3 equals 9. Guys, this is a division problem, right? The opposite of divide, multiply. So I'm going to multiply this by 3. The reason being is 3 is technically over 1, right? This is in the numerator, this is in the denominator. Those cancel out. What I do to one side though, I gotta do to the other. So now I get x equals 27. X equals 27. All right, example 5. X divided by 2.5 equals 7. So guys, this looks like a wonky fraction, right? Just remember, a fraction bar is just division. So x divided by 2 1/2. Actually, what we can do, what's the opposite of division? Multiplication. So example 5. So we're gonna multiply this by 2 1/2. This cancels out with this, but what I do to one side, I must do to the other. Okay, so we're excited tonight, yay. In order to multiply fractions, we have to put this over 1. Give me just 1 hot second. Oh my God. All right, so they're being very needy tonight. You can see my puppers. Come here. Come here. This is Boris. He's very needy right now. And Scout is trying to jump up too, and Scout is right down here. So anyway, those are my dogs. Okay, get down. So my husband's out of town, you guys, and so my dogs are going crazy because they're like, play with me, play with me, play with me. Anyway, let's get back to the problem. Okay, so I already lost my marker. All right, like I said, guys, we have 7/1 times. Now let's turn this into an improper fraction. 5/2. X equals, we can't cancel anything else. We get 35/2. 35/2. You can turn it back into a mixed number if you'd like. 2 goes into 35. What is that? 16 times? Nope, 17 times? Yeah, 17 times. 17 times 2 is, right, 34. Carry the 1. So, okay, all right. These dogs. Okay, so x equals 17.5 or 35 halves, either way. All right, guys. Oh, these lovely dogs. All right, I'm gonna pause this and do something with my dogs, and then you guys are going to also do A through B. Or A through D on page 104. Thanks, guys. All right, you guys, so I think my dogs have calmed down. We'll find out and see. All right, so we're gonna do those practice problems 4A. Give those a shot. If you haven't already, pause and give it a shot and then come back. Good, we are multiplying in this equation, right? And the opposite of multiply is divide, but we can't divide fractions. We multiply by the reciprocal, because when we do that, this cancels out with this cancels out with this, but what we do to one side, we must do to the other. So x equals, I'm gonna divide this by 3 and get 1, divide this by 3 and get 9. So upstairs I have 9 times 5, which gives me 45. Downstairs I have 1 times 1, which is 1, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. B. 3 1/5 y equals 32. All right, we're gonna start by turning that into an improper fraction. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 more is 16, so 16 out of 5y equals 32. Just like we did upstairs, up on A, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. 5 over 16. When we do that, this cancels out with this cancels out with this, but what we do to one side, we must also do to the other. All right, 16 times 2 is 32. So I'm gonna divide this by 16 and get 1, divide this by 16, get 2. Y equals, upstairs I have 2 times 5, which is 10. Downstairs I have 1 times 1, which is 1, so I'm gonna leave it as 10. Okay? All right, so let's try C. X divided by 1/4 equals 20. X divided by 1/4 equals 20. The opposite of divide is, or the inverse of divide is multiply. So I'm going to multiply this by 1/4 because when I do that, this cancels out with this, right? When I yeah, that should work. Yeah. Because if we did, yeah, never mind. I had to think about something. Okay, so then this is like over 1, and this is 1/4, right? So X equals 20 times, so I can divide this by 4, I get 1, divide this by 4, I get 5, right? So I get 5 over 1, or 5 times 1, which is 5, and 1 times 1, which is 1. So it's 5 over 1 or just 5. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, and for our last one, D, X divided by 2 and 1/4 equals 5. X divided by 2 and 1/4. I'm going to turn this into an improper fraction. So move this to D over here. This is 9. So this is going to be 9/4, right? So just write it like that. 9/4. Multiply this by 9/4. This cancels out with this, and what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. All right, so X equals 5 times 9, which is 45/4. 45/4. All right, guys, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, great work, and I will see you in class. Thanks, guys.